that's what one little factory can do. It doesn't have to control the whole market, just 5% of it. One honest broker can, in fact, make a big difference in the current economic system that we live in. Now, the other thing that I think is important about this whole concept of marketing rainforest products, and that the extractive reserve example brings up, is that people who are the collectors or producers of raw materials, whether they're farmers in the Midwest or whether they're residents of the rainforest, traditionally have received from 2 to 7% of the price of those commodities when they're sold in the West. And what we're saying is we can help those producers earn more by adding value by local processing, but also by making sure that they get some of the value that's added just normally through the marketing system. When you take Brazil nuts from Brazil and sell them in New York, you add about 20%, of which 13% is actual cost. They deserve a percentage of that increase. They also deserve a percentage of whatever increases them in processing here and manufacturing into cereals or frozen yogurt or ice cream or candy or whatever. And that's what this particular program is all about, showing that we're all interconnected. Consumers, in fact, in the U.S. in particular, who consume 20 times the world's average of all the materials in the world, are the major part of the problem. But what we're trying to do is let Americans do what they do best and save the rainforest at the same time. So the more they eat, the better it is for those who live in the rainforest. And by putting this kind of information on a package, it lets consumers begin to see what their impact is on the world and what kind of effect it's had. And hopefully we will begin to change consumption patterns. But in the short term, that's not going to happen. Politically, it just isn't going to happen in the next 10 years. But we can at least use this system that we've created to help fund a transformation of the global economy.
Are the premiums that your producers are paying the primary way that you transfer the value back to the collectors and producers?
No, in fact, the premiums or the price that the nut factory pays to gatherers represents probably only 10% of that factory's operating costs. But what happens is, for example, last year, when we had the best data so far, we sold about $330,000 worth of nuts to Community Products to make Rainforest Crunch. They paid a 5% premium on those nuts, which was $16,500. They also paid a profit sharing, revenue sharing, the social equity premium that I've mentioned before, which is 20% in that company's case, and that came to $100,000. So on $330,000 worth of sales, $116,500 was generated to go back to the rainforest. That's about a 35% profit margin, if you will. And that is the way that we're talking about taking some of the value that's added at each layer and sending it back to the original producers. Now, no nut sheller in Brazil is going to make a 35% margin just on the act of shelling nuts. But this is a way that you can actually increase their profit margin.
And did the Rainforest Crunch company make money after they paid their premium and their social equity?
Well, that was 20% of their profit, so they made $500,000 in the first year of operation, which isn't bad for a startup. On $3.5 million worth of sales.
Yes.
Can you explain the connection between making that shift in the economy and saving trees? I mean, how is getting that money back into forest cooperatives saving trees?
I could say that simply. Right now, this is kind of a gross simplification, but if they clear an acre of a rainforest, they make $1,000 roughly. But then that's the end of the income. If they sell their extracted reserves, nuts, fruits, and other items, they can make $1,000 per year, every single year. That's a substantial incentive to keep the rainforest up. The other thing is that the Brazil nut at this moment only grows in virgin rainforest. So the more market we make for Brazil nut, the more rainforest has to stay in place so that market can be satisfied.
One of the things that's happened is that in the first year of trading Brazil nuts, we have been able to prove that Brazil nuts themselves generate 3 to 4 times as much income as the same area cleared and planted to pasture using kilos of beef for the market. In fact, that calculation when you start adding rubber and fruits and oils, any of the medicinals, any of the essential oils, we could easily be talking 1,000 times more income for a sustainable use of these areas than is created through pasture, which is not sustainable, which is degraded and defunct within 5 to 7 years. None of the pastures created prior to 1980 in the Amazon are still used as pastures today. None of them, not one. That's the reality of that kind of economic model.
Yeah.
You're basing what you're doing to say the rainforest on an economic model, and there's some interesting things that you're doing in terms of the national cooperative and bringing that closer to the producers and bringing it under their control, so building cooperativism, and then also the direct marketing, and then also the sexual equity fund. So there's some very innovative things there in terms of economics. But is the rainforest problem primarily an economic problem or a social problem in Brazil? There may be other reasons besides economics for the cutting down of rainforest and the use of pasture.
The major reason that rainforests were being cut at such an accelerated rate in the 80s was that elites in the Amazon, in combination with a military dictatorship, had the power to literally push people off the land and convert it for a short-term kind of profit. We have a slightly different situation in Brazil now. Brazil is more democratic than it used to be. People do have the right to vote, and that right translates through numbers into some power, at least at the local level. We also have a situation where the elites in the Amazon are not part of the national political system and are kind of looked down on by the elites in other parts of the world. And so there's an interesting coalition that's developing now between the rural residents of the Amazon and the urban poor and the national elites in São Paulo and Rio, who are looking for broad-based political parties. What that means is there's opportunity. Of course, the situation in the Amazon is a social problem. The problem, however, is always defined in economic terms. We need to generate income, we need to do this. So I think to combat it, we need to generate income to deal with that argument. But in general, we need to empower people who live in the Amazon. And one of the ways to do